The word useless landed in the courtroom like a slap, sharp and humiliating, spoken with the confidence of someone who believed the world was finally watching him win. The woman standing at the defense table felt her knees weaken, not because the judge looked at her with doubt, but because she had spent years slowly believing that word herself. She had been stripped of her dignity long before this courtroom, long before the divorce papers, long before the man who once promised forever decided she was disposable. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and quiet strength that rises when everything seems lost, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Kindness Diaries. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Her name was Ariba, and for most of her adult life she had learned how to disappear. She learned how to fold her dreams small enough to fit into kitchen drawers, how to smile politely when her opinions were dismissed, how to nod when told that her only value was obedience. She had married young, stepping into a world where her husband's ambition mattered more than her education, where her sacrifices were expected but never acknowledged. When she left her job to support his rising career, it was called teamwork. When he rose higher and she remained behind, it became proof, in his eyes, that she had nothing of her own. The years drained her quietly. She managed the home, cared for aging in-laws, and stood beside him at corporate events where her presence was ornamental. When people asked what she did, she learned to answer vaguely, her voice soft, as if apologizing for existing. Inside, however, she carried a restless ache, a sense that she was capable of more, even if no one around her wanted to see it. That ache became heavier when success hardened her husband into someone unrecognizable, someone who spoke to her with impatience and contempt, someone who treated her silence as proof of inferiority. The collapse came suddenly. A younger colleague, a faster lifestyle, and a narrative he told himself about deserving better. The marriage ended not with grief but with legal aggression. In court, he painted himself as the visionary burdened by a woman who contributed nothing. He spoke confidently of finances, of growth, of how he had carried dead weight for too long. The word useless was not shouted, but it was delivered calmly, deliberately, as if stating an obvious fact. The courtroom grew quiet, and in that silence Ariba felt years of endurance turn into something heavier than shame. She did not cry. She stared at the polished wood floor, grounding herself in its cold certainty. She thought of nights she stayed awake managing household accounts so he could rest, of dinners she hosted to impress his investors, of opportunities she declined so his ego could expand freely. None of it existed on paper. None of it mattered in a room that respected numbers over sacrifice. The judge listened carefully, pen moving steadily, eyes neutral. Ariba wondered if this was how erasure felt, orderly and complete. Then something shifted. It began with the opening of the courtroom doors, a subtle interruption that drew a few glances. A man entered with measured confidence, not rushed, not loud, accompanied by a legal team whose presence carried weight. He was known in business circles, a self-made CEO whose decisions moved markets quietly but decisively. He had not come for spectacle. He had come because the truth, long buried, had finally reached him. Years earlier, before marriage had taken over her life, Ariba had worked briefly at a startup that never made headlines. During that time, she had designed a system, a framework for client management that solved a problem no one else could. The idea had been dismissed internally due to lack of funding, but it did not die. It was acquired, refined, and eventually became the backbone of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Her name had been lost in transition, but her work had not. When documents surfaced during the divorce, the CEO recognized patterns only one mind could create. The courtroom felt different when he addressed the bench. He did not raise his voice or seek drama. He presented evidence, timelines, and intellectual property records with calm precision. He referred to Ariba with formal respect, acknowledging her contributions and identifying her as the original architect of a system that fueled his company's growth. In that moment, the same room that had accepted her erasure was forced to confront her existence. Heads turned. Pens paused. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Ariba lifted her eyes for the first time that day. She felt something unfamiliar spread through her chest, not pride exactly, but recognition. The CEO spoke of her diligence, her foresight, her refusal to take credit at a time when she believed her role was secondary. He did not speak of charity or kindness. He spoke of value, measurable and undeniable. In a single acknowledgement, years of dismissal began to unravel. Her former husband sat stiffly, his confidence cracking at the edges. The narrative he had crafted so carefully began to collapse under facts he could not control. The judge reviewed the new information with renewed attention, the atmosphere shifting from routine to consequential. The proceedings took a different turn, one grounded in fairness rather than familiarity. When the session ended, the ruling reflected more than legal balance. It recognized contribution, intellectual ownership, and the quiet labor often overlooked. Ariba walked out of the courtroom not victorious in the dramatic sense, but restored in a way that felt deeper. Outside, sunlight filtered through tall columns, and for the first time in years she stood without shrinking. Life did not transform overnight, but direction returned. The CEO offered her a role not as an act of rescue, but as a professional invitation. She accepted after careful thought, determined to rebuild herself on her own terms. In meetings, she spoke with clarity. In projects, she led with confidence tempered by empathy. People listened, not because of her past, but because of her competence. Slowly, the voice that once apologized for existing learned to speak without fear. She also learned to forgive herself. For staying too long. For believing too little. For confusing silence with strength. Healing came in stages, marked by quiet mornings, challenging days, and the steady accumulation of self-trust. She no longer needed approval to validate her worth. She had seen how quickly opinions could change when truth was allowed into the room. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that unseen effort still matters, please take a moment to like, share, and engage with this video. Your support helps these stories reach others who may be standing where Ariba once stood. Before we end, leave a comment below sharing what this story made you feel, or simply write that you believe in kindness and second chances. Your words may be the encouragement someone else needs today. Ariba's journey did not end with applause or headlines. It continued in the quiet confidence of a woman who finally knew her worth, not because someone powerful said it out loud, but because she had reclaimed it herself. And sometimes, that is the most powerful verdict of all.